$14 billion. That is what the invisible silent epidemic of workplace and school bullying costs the U.S. economy every single year.
Yeah. It's wild. You don't hear a burglar alarm or see a broken window, but the structural damage is, it's catastrophic.
Right, because it operates completely beneath the surface.
Exactly. We're looking at this landscape of coercive control, psychological warfare, really, that leaves the target completely disoriented.
Yeah, they're sitting in a cubicle or, staring at a smartphone in their bedroom, wondering if they're the ones losing their minds.
Right. And that psychological warfare is exactly what we are dissecting today.
Welcome to the Deep Dive, everyone. Our mission for you, the listener, today is to analyze the resources and the core philosophy of a platform called FG Own Your Power.
It's this really comprehensive anti-bullying framework. It was created by Jason Langley, who's a registered nurse, and Jennifer Langley, a human resources expert.
Right, and we're going to look at how they combine clinical psychology, artificial intelligence, and just hard data to disarm toxic behavior in schools, workplaces, and, well, everyday relationships.
What's fascinating here is what makes their approach so different from your standard conflict resolution. They treat this invisible threat with this systemic rigor of, like, a forensic investigation.
Yeah, it's like they're applying diagnostic tools to human cruelty. So, okay, let's unpack this, because before we can get into the mechanics of how these tools stop the manipulation, we really have to understand the sheer scale of the damage.
Oh, absolutely.
Like when you hear $14.3 billion, it sounds so abstract. Where is that capital actually vanishing to?
Well, when you break down the data, this is from the Global Bullying Intelligence Center, the sinkhole becomes very clear. In the workplace alone, that is $8.8 billion lost to productivity and turnover.
$8.8 billion just in the workplace.
Yeah. That figure represents talented professionals quietly quitting or taking extended medical leave because they're being systematically targeted by a boss or a colleague.
Wow. And then what about schools?
Right, so schools are spending $3.5 billion on security and behavioral interventions, and then the healthcare system is absorbing another $2 billion in mental health treatment.
That's for, like, anxiety and depression.
Exactly. Anxiety, depression, and PTSD that is directly linked to chronic bullying.
I look at those numbers, and it really frames the issue as a full-blown public health crisis, not just some behavioral quirk or, kids being kids.
No, not at all.
But we hear these massive dollar amounts thrown around constantly. I want to look under the hood. What is the actual mechanism causing that kind of long-term financial and physical damage to one person?
So the mechanism is basically a fundamental disruption of human potential. Researchers put the lifetime cost per bullied child between $85,000 and $140,000.
Wait, over 100 grand?
Yeah, because chronic victimization literally rewires a person's trajectory. A bullied student experiences a documented drop in educational attainment. They skip class, their grades slip, they drop out of extracurriculars.
Right, which directly leads to lower lifetime earnings.
Exactly. And when you combine that reduced income with a vastly increased reliance on healthcare to manage chronic stress over their whole lifespan, you are paying the toll for that trauma for decades.
It's like compounding interest of trauma. And the data in these sources, it gets significantly darker when we look at where this trajectory eventually leads if nobody interrupts it.
Yeah, we have to talk about what researchers from the FBI and the U.S. Secret Service call the bullying to violence pipeline.
Right, the pipeline.
They've identified this highly documented pathway from chronic victimization to violent behavior. It's not just a sudden, mysterious snap, It's a predictable progression following 4 distinct stages.
Okay, so stage 1 is chronic victimization. The target is just repeatedly worn down day after day.
Right. And then stage 2 is social isolation, which is a critical pivot point.
Because they get cut off from their support systems.
Yes. Sometimes this is intentional by the bully, who kind of poisons the well by spreading rumors. But other times, the victim withdraws voluntarily. The shame of being targeted is just too heavy to share.
Which isolates them perfectly for stage 3, right? The crisis point.
Yeah. The crisis point is a structural collapse of their coping mechanisms. The psychological pressure just exceeds their capacity to endure it.
And that tips them into stage 4, which is violent ideation.
Exactly.
The numbers backing up this pipeline are honestly terrifying. According to the Secret Service National Threat Assessment Center, 71% of school attackers were chronically bullied.
Yeah, and the FBI Behavioral Analysis Unit corroborates that. They found that 78% of attackers had a documented history of being bullied.
78%.
And a staggering 87% of school attackers felt persecuted by others. I mean, it is the single most common denominator in these tragedies.
But looking closely at the data, I think this was from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. There is a massive intervention window here.
Oh, totally. Because the pipeline is so predictable, early intervention can drop those violent incidents by up to 50%.
Half. You can cut it in half.
Yeah, if you sever the chain at stage 1 or stage 2, you prevent stage 4 entirely. But to execute that, you really need to know who is in the crosshair.
Right. Who is actually being targeted?
The demographic data from organizations like GLSEN and the National Center for Education Statistics shows us this crisis doesn't distribute equally at all.
No, definitely not.
Native American students face the highest overall bullying rates at 31%. Multiracial students are at 27%. Students with disabilities are targeted at 33% compared to 19% for their peers.
And the vulnerability data just skyrockets when you look at the LGBTQ plus community. 52% of LGBTQ plus students and 59% of transgender students experience bullying.
It's heartbreaking. And the cyberbullying data shows a massive peak right at that vulnerable middle school age, 12 to 14. It heavily affects girls at a rate of 38%.
That brings us to the core challenge. Knowing that this crisis actively escalates to violence, costs billions, and disproportionately targets marginalized populations, the real question is, how do you engineer resilience in a vulnerable person?
Right. And that's where the FG platform comes in with what they call the 7 pillars of empowerment.
Okay, the 7 pillars are, let me make sure I have these right. Stand up, set boundaries, reclaim your voice, build inner strength, respond with strength, heal and rebuild, and protect and advocate.
Yes, the list.
But I have to push back a bit here. Telling someone, especially someone who's actively being traumatized, to just set a boundary is, well, it's kind of useless advice. It's incredibly hard to do in the moment.
Oh, absolutely, it is.
Like when your heart rate is spiking and someone is screaming at you, your brain just wants to survive. You freeze.
What's fascinating here is that the platform acknowledges that exact biological reality. When you're under psychological attack, you experience what's known as an amygdala hijack.
An amygdala hijack.
Yeah, the amygdala is your brain's primitive threat detector. When it sounds the alarm, it essentially shuts off your prefrontal cortex.
And that's the logic center, right?
Exactly. It's responsible for logic, reasoning, finding the perfect words. So during an attack, you literally lose access to your vocabulary.
Wow. So how does a training module override an ancient survival instinct like that?
Well, they don't rely on, motivational platitudes. They root the training in clinical frameworks to just bypass the hijack entirely.
Okay.
So under the stand up and set boundaries pillars, they utilize the Dear Man framework. This is a highly researched technique pulled directly from dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT.
Dear Man is an acronym, right?
Yeah.
Describe, express, assert, reinforce, mindful, appear confident, and negotiate.
Correct. It's a structured formula for assertive communication. The platform gives users ready-to-use memorizable scripts based on this formula.
Like what kind of scripts?
Things as simple as, I'm not comfortable with that, or that doesn't work for me. The whole goal is to remove the cognitive load from the victim in that moment.
Oh, I see. It's like building muscle memory for a physical sport.
Yeah.
You practice the Dear Man script over and over in a safe environment. So when the turbulence hits and your prefrontal cortex shuts down, your mouth already knows the shape of the boundary.
Exactly. You don't have to invent a response. You just execute a protocol.
That makes so much sense.
It acts as a cognitive circuit breaker. You shift from a panicked reaction to a controlled response. And they reinforce this with daily practices for inner strength, breathing exercises to lower the heart rate, and specialized recovery roadmaps for the complex trauma caused by narcissistic abuse.
Okay, but psychological armor only goes so far when the attacks are digital, right? Like happening at 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
How do you set a boundary with a screen?
It's tough.
Because modern bullying isn't always someone cornering you in a hallway. It's subtle. It's a passive-aggressive email from a boss or a manipulative text from a former partner that leaves you staring at your phone, just questioning your own reality.
And here's where it gets really interesting. This is the transition from clinical psychology to artificial intelligence.
Yeah, I have to admit I was highly skeptical of these AI tools at first. It felt like trying to use an algorithm to solve a deeply human emotional problem.
I get that.
But looking at how the platform deploys these 40-plus tools, I realize it's not about fixing the emotion. It's about breaking the spell of the manipulation.
Yes, it directly attacks the invisibility of the threat. A manipulator's greatest weapon is making you doubt your own perception.
Right.
So the platform uses AI to mechanically validate your reality. Take the AI message analyzer, for example.
Okay, how does that work?
Let's say you receive a text that makes your stomach drop, but the words themselves seem polite. You run it through the analyzer, and it detects the underlying passive-aggressive tactics that your gut felt, but your brain couldn't articulate.
That is so validating. And the gaslighting decoder is brilliant for this too.
Oh, absolutely.
Gaslighting is that terrifying reality distortion tactic where the abuser makes you feel crazy for noticing their abuse. You start to think, maybe I am too sensitive. Maybe I did remember it wrong.
Right, and the decoder scans the communication for those specific patterns of denial and misdirection. And then there is the apology analyzer.
Okay, wait. How does an AI actually spot a fake apology? Because we've all received the classic, I'm sorry you felt that way when I did that.
Right, the non-apology. It operates by scanning for semantic shifts and conditional language. A genuine apology uses absolute ownership. I am sorry I did this. A manipulative apology uses conditional language. I am sorry if you were offended. The AI measures the ratio of blame-shifting pronouns versus ownership language. It calculates accountability metrics and highlights the exact sentences where the bully is dodging responsibility.
That is incredible. It also identifies tactics like DARVO, which is a highly specific, terrifyingly effective psychological loop.
Yeah. DARVO stands for deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender.
Right. So let's say, okay, you confront a colleague because they took credit for your presentation. First, they deny it ever happened.
Classic.
Then they attack you, saying you're paranoid and unprofessional. Then they reverse the roles of victim and offender, claiming that your false accusations are creating a toxic work environment for them.
Yeah, and suddenly you are the one apologizing for being stolen from.
Exactly. It makes you so dizzy.
But once you can name the tactic, once the AI highlights the text and labels it DARVE, it loses its power over you. You shift from being a panicked emotional participant to an objective forensic observer.
Which is so empowering.
And you also have the before you send AI tone analyzer. When you get hit with DARVO, your instinct is to lash out, right?
For sure. You want to defend yourself.
This tool scans your drafted reply to ensure it remains professional so you don't accidentally hand the bully ammunition to take to management.
Which brings up a massive structural issue. Documentation. So often, victims lose HR battles or legal disputes because of the he said, she said dynamic.
Yes. The bully is usually charismatic, calm, and charming to authority figures. Meanwhile, the victim, who has been worn down for months, looks stressed, emotional, and disorganized.
So the burden of proof unfairly falls on the exhausted target. But the platform solves this mechanically with the evidence vault. Think of the evidence vault less like a digital filing cabinet and more like a black box on an airplane.
Oh, that is a perfect way to look at it. It meticulously timestamps the exact moments of turbulence caused by the bully.
Right.
You pair the secure documentation of the evidence vault with the incident logger and the toxic pattern timeline. What this does is visualize the abuse over a period of months.
So it takes like 50 isolated, seemingly minor microaggressions and visually proves a relentless pattern of coercive control.
Exactly. When the crash happens, HR doesn't have to guess who caused it. You hand over a bound, timestamped PDF report. It completely destroys the he said, she said dynamic because data replaces hearsay.
I love that. They also provide interactive tools like the Boss Bully Quiz, a toxic relationship quiz, and a conflict animal simulator.
Yeah, those help you discover your own baseline conflict style so you know where your blind spots are.
Okay, so we've equipped the target. They have the Dear Man scripts to bypass the amygdala hijack. They have the AI decoders to validate their reality. They have the evidence vault's black box. They are armored up.
Right, they're ready.
But the environment still dictates the outcome. A bully thrives in silence. If they're acting out in front of a group and everyone just looks down at their shoes, the bully's power is confirmed.
And this brings us to what might be the most vital statistic in the entire dataset. Research shows that 57% of bullying stops within 10 seconds when a bystander intervenes.
Wait, 57%?
Yes.
More than half the time, the mere presence of a peer saying, hey, that's not cool, collapses the bully's entire power dynamic instantly.
In 10 seconds. It's amazing.
So what does this all mean for us? If we know that peer intervention is the silver bullet, how do we actually train people to be that 57%?
Yeah.
Because nobody wakes up wanting to be a coward. People want to help, but they just freeze.
They freeze because of a psychological phenomenon called the diffusion of responsibility.
Diffusion of
Yeah.
responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah. When you're in a group and someone is being harassed, your brain assumes someone else with more authority will step in. Everyone thinks someone else will act, so nobody acts.
Well, that makes sense.
The platform tackles this through their Bystander and Ally Hub, using the 5-step bystander intervention model developed by psychologists Latani and Darley.
Right. They break down the specific psychological barriers that keep people frozen.
And they offer a practical toolkit known as the 4 Ds of intervention: direct, distract, delegate, and delay.
Okay, let's break those down. Direct is confronting it head on.
Yeah.
Saying, leave them alone.
Yes. And distract is causing a diversion to break the tension, like dropping a book or asking a completely unrelated question to derail the bully's momentum.
Then delegate is recognizing you don't have the power, so you go get an authority figure or HR.
Exactly. And delay is crucial. If you couldn't intervene safely in the moment, you check in with the victim afterward so they know they aren't crazy and they aren't alone.
And the platform doesn't just, hand you a list to memorize. They feature an interactive scenario matcher game.
Yeah, it operates like a flight simulator for social courage. You are given a complex, real-world scenario. You choose one of the 4D strategies, and the system gives you tiered feedback rating your choice as best, good, or risky based on the context.
So you get to practice being an upstander and failing safely before you ever have to do it in a real hallway or boardroom.
Exactly. And if we connect this back to the bullying to violence pipeline we discussed earlier, the bystander training directly attacks stage 2, social isolation.
Because the antidote to isolation is connection.
Bingo! That is why the community aspect of this platform is so vital. They've built hubs for every ecosystem.
Like what kind of hubs?
There are HR toolkits, there are educator toolkits with over 35 lesson plans aligned with social emotional learning standards. There are specific resources for military families and first responders who operate in highly structured, high-stress environments.
They also include a very robust section for faith-based recovery, which I thought was really interesting. For a lot of survivors, trauma isolates them spiritually just as much as it does socially.
That's a huge point. The platform provides curated Bible verses specifically chosen for courage, guided prayers for protection, and a community prayer wall.
And these aren't as reading materials, right?
No, they serve as a focal point to disrupt the intrusive thoughts that follow abuse. They also host anonymous support circles and a shout-out wall to celebrate victories. The underlying architecture across all these tools delivers one message: you do not have to heal in a vacuum.
That's powerful. So to synthesize this entire journey for you, the listener, we've looked at how FG Own Your Power is tackling a multi-billion-dollar, profoundly damaging crisis by fundamentally shifting the balance of power.
Yes.
They are equipping individuals with clinical psychology, like the DBT frameworks, to serve as a cognitive firewall. They're deploying cutting-edge AI to decode semantic manipulation and secure ironclad evidence. And they are using evidence-based bystander training to systematically dismantle the culture of silence in the environments where we live and work.
They are basically making the invisible threat visible and providing a mechanical solution for a deeply emotional problem.
And the practical application for you is immediate. Whether you're prepping for a difficult performance review with a micromanaging boss, trying to navigate a passive-aggressive relative at a family gathering, or you're a parent trying to give your kid the vocabulary to defend themselves online. These tools offer a masterclass in protecting your energy and commanding respect.
It really is a masterclass in behavioral defense, but it also raises an important and perhaps slightly uncomfortable question as we look to the horizon of this technology.
Oh, uncomfortable how? Where do you see this heading?
Well, think about it. We have spent this entire time exploring how to use these incredible AI decoders to analyze the communication of others, highlighting their gaslighting, their Darvo tactics, their fake apologies.
Right.
But as this technology becomes ubiquitous and sits in everyone's pocket, if AI can reliably decode emotional manipulation in our texts in mere seconds, how long until we are forced to start using these exact same tools to analyze and correct our own communication habits in our everyday relationships?
Oh, wow. Turning the forensic lab inward. Running an AI check on your own text message to see if you are the one deploying conditional language or subtle manipulation.
Exactly. We might find some things we don't like.
That is a fascinating thought to leave on. The invisible broken windows might just be the ones we are accidentally breaking ourselves. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, stay empowered, and we'll catch you next time.